The gleaming medical bay of the Xeraxian Defense Station, Starlight Haven, hummed with its usual efficiency as Dr. Thera adjusted her crystalline diagnostic scanner. Her iridescent scales shifted from their usual calm azure to a slight purple of concentration as she reviewed the day's patient roster. The war with the Nexaran Empire had brought an unprecedented alliance between humans and Xeraxians, and with it came the challenge of treating an entirely new species. A sharp alert pierced the sterile air. Emergency incoming. Human casualties from Sector 7. The medical bay doors whooshed open as medics rushed in with hover stretchers. Thera's hearts quickened. This would be her first human patient. The first stretcher carried an unconscious human male, his military uniform torn and bloodied. Commander James Harrison, Human Special Forces, a medic reported, caught in a plasma burst during the evacuation of New Eden Colony. Thera's tendrils extended instinctively, their sensitive tips already gathering biological data as she approached. The commander's vital signs were erratic but strong, remarkably strong for the extent of his injuries. She had studied human physiology extensively during the Alliance's medical exchange program, but theory was quite different from practice. "Begin cellular regeneration sequence," she ordered, her scaled hands moving with practiced precision over the medical console. The commander's burns were severe, requiring immediate attention. As the regeneration field hummed to life, Thera noticed something peculiar in his biochemical readings. Elevated levels of various hormones she hadn't encountered in her studies. As she worked, Thera couldn't help but be fascinated by the human's alien physiology. Their single heart seemed so inefficient compared to the Xeraxian triple cardiac system, yet somehow they managed to survive incredible trauma. The commander's body was responding to treatment with remarkable resilience. Hours passed as Thera meticulously repaired the damage. The commander's condition stabilized, but he remained unconscious. Following standard protocol, she began the detailed physical assessment required for all new patients. Everything proceeded normally until her scanner detected an unusual swelling in his lower anatomy. Thera's scales shifted to a worried green. "Nurse Vex, are you seeing these readings?" She adjusted her scanner, concerned about possible internal bleeding. The readings made no sense. Blood flow was increased to the area, but there were no signs of trauma or inflammation. The more experienced nurse glanced at the readings and made a sound that might have been a suppressed laugh. "Ah, Dr. Thera, that's a natural human male response. Nothing to be concerned about." Thera's scales flushed a deep teal of embarrassment. Her medical training hadn't covered certain aspects of human physiological responses. She made a mental note to update the xenobiology database as she continued her examination, trying to maintain professional detachment. Commander Harrison's unconscious form shifted slightly, and Thera found herself studying his features with growing curiosity. Human faces were so expressive, even in unconsciousness. The commander's strong jaw and defined features were quite different from Xeraxian symmetry, yet oddly compelling. "Doctor." Harrison's voice was rough as his eyes fluttered open, revealing striking steel-gray irises. "Where am I?" Thera's professional demeanor snapped back into place. "Commander Harrison, you're in the medical bay of Starlight Haven. You were injured during the evacuation. How are you feeling?" Harrison attempted to sit up but winced. "Like I tried to wrestle a star drive." "You're Xeraxian?" "Yes, I'm Dr. Thera, Chief Medical Officer of this sector." She placed a scaled hand on his shoulder, gently but firmly keeping him in place. "Please remain still. Your cellular regeneration is still in progress." His eyes locked onto hers, and Thera felt an unexpected flutter in her secondary heart. "You saved my life, Doctor." A small smile played at the corners of his mouth. "I guess I owe you one." "You owe me nothing except compliance with your recovery plan," Thera replied, but her scales betrayed her with a slight shift toward rose, the Xeraxian equivalent of a blush. "Now, can you tell me what you remember about the attack?" As Harrison recounted the events, Thera noticed her scanner picking up those unusual readings again. This time, she understood their cause, but the knowledge only made her more acutely aware of the strange tension building in the room. She forced herself to focus on her duties, recording his vital signs and adjusting treatment parameters. Yet she couldn't quite ignore the way Harrison's eyes followed her movements, or how his pulse quickened slightly when she checked his bandages. "You have unusual techniques, Doctor," Harrison observed. "Different from human physicians. Zyrexian medicine focuses on energy flow and cellular harmony," Thera explained, grateful for the professional topic. "We find it more effective than traditional human methods for treating plasma burns." "Clearly," he agreed, flexing his partially healed arm. "I've never recovered this quickly before." His movement caused the medical gown to shift, and Thera quickly averted her eyes from the resulting physiological response. The rest of the examination proceeded without incident, but Thera found herself inexplicably looking forward to the commander's future checkups. As she updated his medical file that evening, she realized that treating her first human patient had been far more interesting than she'd anticipated. In her private quarters later, Thera found herself reviewing human physiological responses in the medical database, telling herself it was purely for professional development. Yet she couldn't quite explain why she kept returning to the commander's file, or why her scales shifted to rows every time she remembered his smile. Commander Harrison's recovery progressed faster than any human patient on record, yet Dr. Thera found herself inventing reasons to extend his stay in the medical bay. Each morning, she told herself it was purely scientific interest that made her check his vital signs first among all her patients. "Your tissue regeneration is remarkable," she noted one morning, her scanner hovering over his nearly healed chest. "The human healing factor continues to surprise me." Harrison sat up, the movement causing his medical gown to strain against his restored musculature. "Maybe it's the doctor's touch," he suggested with that disarming smile that made Thera's scales ripple with color. "Commander Harrison." "James," he interrupted. "After saving my life, I think you've earned first-name privileges." Thera's tendrils quivered slightly, a Zyrexian sign of flusterment she hoped he couldn't interpret. "Commander, I should inform you that among Zyrexians, using personal names implies a level of intimacy reserved for potential mates." Harrison's eyebrows rose, and Thera noticed the now familiar spike in his hormone levels. "Is that so? And here I thought I was just being friendly." His tone suggested he wasn't entirely sorry for the misunderstanding. Before Thera could respond, the medical bay's doors slid open with a hiss. Lieutenant Crix, another Zyrexian officer, entered with a data pad. His scales darkened to a formal indigo when he saw them. "Dr. Thera, the Joint Command requests your latest report on human recovery rates." His eyes flickered to Harrison. "I see your primary subject is progressing well." Thera straightened, her scales settling into their professional azure. "Indeed. Commander Harrison's case is providing valuable data for our xenobiology database." "Among other things," Crix remarked dryly, his tendrils twitching in what Thera recognized as disapproval. "The command also wishes to remind all staff about proper interspecies protocols." After Crix left, an awkward silence fell over the medical bay. Harrison broke it first. "I seem to be causing you professional trouble, Doctor." "Not at all," Thera replied, perhaps too quickly. "Your case is genuinely fascinating from a medical perspective. For instance, your cellular regeneration rate is 47% faster than our models predicted, and your neurological responses to our treatments are unique." "Is that all that's unique about my responses?" Harrison asked softly, and Thera's scanner beeped as it detected another spike in his vital signs. She decided a change of subject was in order. "Tell me about the New Eden colony. What were you doing there before the attack?" Harrison's expression grew serious. "Officially, I was there as a military advisor. Unofficially," he glanced around before continuing in a lower voice, "we had intelligence suggesting the Nexarans were developing a new biological weapon. Something that could target specific species." Thera's scales paled. That would violate every intergalactic convention on warfare. Since when have the Nexarans cared about conventions? Harrison's face hardened. We were close to finding proof when they attacked. Too close, apparently. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of other medical staff, and Thera reluctantly moved on to her other patients. Throughout the day, she found her thoughts returning to Harrison's revelation. If the Nexarans truly had such a weapon, both humans and Zeraxians were at risk. That evening, as she was completing her rounds, she found Harrison attempting to access a computer terminal. "Commander, you shouldn't be out of bed. I need to contact my unit," he insisted, wincing as he tried to stand straighter. "The information we gathered, it's too important to lose." Breaking protocol. The medical bay erupted into chaos as the new patients arrived. Thera's hearts pounded as she processed their symptoms. Cellular degradation unlike anything she'd seen before, targeting specific genetic markers. "It's happening," Harrison said grimly, appearing beside her despite orders to rest. "The weapon is ready." "You shouldn't be here," Thera protested, but her tendrils reached instinctively toward him, betraying her concern. "These are my people, Doctor, and soon it could be yours." His hand found hers, warm skin against cool scales. "I need your help." The next hours blurred as they worked together, Thera's medical expertise combining with Harrison's intelligence about the weapon. Each patient provided new clues about the Nexaran bioweapon's mechanism. "Look at this," Thera pointed to a molecular scan. "It's not just targeting humans, it's adaptable. These protein structures could be modified to attack Zeraxian physiology." Harrison's face darkened. That's why they hit New Eden. They were testing both species at once. His hand tightened on hers. "We need to stop them." "Commander Harrison," Lieutenant Crix's voice cut through their concentration. "You're violating protocols by accessing classified medical data." And Dr. Thera, his scales darkened disapprovingly. "This level of fraternization is inappropriate." Before Thera could respond, Harrison stepped forward. "With respect, Lieutenant, we're on the verge of uncovering a threat to both our species. Protocol can wait." Diplomatic implications. The evidence they gathered reached Joint Command within hours. As the diplomatic channels erupted with activity, Thera and Harrison found themselves at the center of an interstellar crisis. "The Nexarans deny everything," Harrison reported, pacing Thera's office. "But we have proof now, thanks to your analysis." Thera's scales shifted anxiously. "The High Council is split. Some want immediate military action, others fear escalation." She looked up at him. "What happens now?" Harrison stopped pacing, his expression softening as he met her gaze. "Now we trust in what we've built, not just the alliance between our species, but..." He trailed off, moving closer. "James," Thera whispered, using his first name for the first time. Her scales blazed with color as he reached for her. The kiss was unlike anything either had experienced, alien yet perfect, transcending their biological differences. When they parted, both were breathing heavily. "That was," Thera began. "Definitely worth a protocol violation," Harrison finished, smiling. Their moment was interrupted by an emergency alert. The Nexarans had launched their weapon. Bridge between worlds. The next days tested both their professional skills and personal relationship. As the bioweapon spread, Thera worked tirelessly to develop a defense, while Harrison coordinated military responses. "The vaccine synthesizer is ready," Thera announced, her scales bright with exhaustion and hope. "It should protect both species." Harrison pulled her into an embrace, ignoring the startled looks from other medical staff. "You did it. We did it." As the crisis subsided, they faced new challenges. The alliance had strengthened, but relationships between species remained controversial. "The command wants to promote me," Harrison said one evening in Thera's quarters. "Head of Joint Species Defense. And I've been offered lead researcher position in xenobiology." Thera replied, her tendrils entwining with his fingers. "We could work together officially." About that. Harrison knelt, producing a small box. Inside was a ring decorated with both human gems and Zyrexian crystals. I know it's not traditional for either of our species, but nothing about us has been traditional. Epilogue. Years later, the medical bay of Starlight Haven still buzzed with activity, but now under the leadership of Dr. Thera Harrison Vex. Her research had revolutionized interspecies medicine, while her husband's work had strengthened the alliance. Looking at the latest batch of medical students, human and Zyrexian working side by side, Thera smiled, remembering how it all began with a simple misunderstanding about human physiology. Still admiring your handiwork, Harrison's voice came from behind her, followed by his familiar warm embrace. Just thinking about how far we've come, she replied, her scales shifting to the rose color that would always be for him alone. And how it all started with you being a rather difficult patient. Best medical emergency of my life, he chuckled, kissing her tendril-crowned head. As they watched the stars through the medical bay's viewport, Thera's tendrils entwined with Harrison's fingers in their unique gesture of affection. Different biology, different worlds, but in the end, love had proven to be the most powerful force in any galaxy.